Hey guys, how's everything going? This is Superdadd2. Today I wanted to talk about something, and I think it's important for, at least for me, because it's coming up soon, and that's going to have to do with possible future lines, whether they're by the Four Horsemen or anybody else. The reason I'm starting with this image of my modified figure here, as well as some feline characters, is because it's going to play an important part in today's video. So having said that, I kind of want to get started with it. Just wanted to compare some human figures along with some feline figures because we're going to be talking about anthropomorphic figures today. So as we get started, just wanted to introduce you to the first character in the line that I wanted to discuss. And that character is the Four Horsemen's feline warrior figure that's fashioned after Battle Cat. Now I love this figure, I really do. I love the detail, the idea that they've made him a warrior all the way around, his articulation, which lends to his posability, etc., etc. But one of the interesting things I find about the character is that it is still basically a feline head on a human body. And while that is important, and again, it plays into his posability and overall fun factor, we know the character, we enjoy the character, but kind of what's missing to me is the feline quality of his form. Now, what am I talking about particular or specifically? Well, several years ago, there was a series of figs that came out called Rim of the Claw. And if I remember correctly, they were put together and produced by Stan Winston's toy line. I don't have to tell you guys who Stan Winston is. Most of you know him for his visual effects and all the really cool movies from Predator all the way up to the first, I think, through third Jurassic Park. He created these figures, but what was particularly interesting about them was that they all kept their feline characteristics. I mean, you look at their limbs, their arms, their legs. They still looked like, I guess, what cats would look like if they were really anthropomorphized into characters. I mean, they all came with these dynamic facial features that resembled that of the felines they were supposed to represent, but at the same time, they all kept their human characteristics. I mean, they just weren't human heads set on a feline body. But their limbs, again, looked more like what a feline's limbs might look like given the interpretation. All of these are magnificent, although being somewhat limited in articulation. For these at the time, I mean, your imagination can really play out. I'm just hoping that future offerings of anthropomorphic characters continue to have the same type of aesthetic in the limbs. Now, there's nothing wrong, again, with having that feline head on an otherwise normal body. So it doesn't really take away anything from the figure, but at the same token, it just seems to be missing that one level of, I don't know, verisimilitude. But I'm just saying that if you took all of that and put it on a body that was just a little more feline, a little more characteristic, and as you see, all these figures, by the way, came with alternate head sculpts. So, you have your ferocious look and your less ferocious look on each of the figures, which really helps the figure. But again, the only reason I bring this up is because I think if you take these figures and you put them with figures that are a little more anthropomorphized, if that's a word. In other words, something that is more anatomically correct with the head sculpt, I think it creates it, or it removes from that verisimilitude. I think the bottom line is, I guess what I'm asking for is whether the Four Horsemen or anybody else go forward with continuing to make anthropomorphized figures that they kind of follow the idea of making them more akin to the way their physical forms would actually look. So here, let's just take a look at some of the more previous offerings, like Zethius, the Minotaur, produced by the Four Horsemen. even as you look at his hooves, you see that it's just more bull-like. Now anybody can turn around and say, yeah, but you know what, Super Dad? Look at the what are they called? The gleaves or whatever it is that are covering his feet. Maybe they're paws underneath. Maybe they are, but they just come off more as human. And if we look at the authoring, I mean, Zethius is magnificent. I mean, look at that. Look at the ornateness, and beyond that, the way his hooves look. If you look down and you can just see how his hooves are they just much more answer that whole bull countenance than just the coverings of the feet. They look really good. I mean, it looks really stellar. I mean, if we take a look at the Minotaur just by itself, you can totally see how he just knocks it out of the park. I mean, the hooves I get that his hands still look a lot more human than they may normally look, but his hooves just make it stand out. And maybe that's all it takes. I don't know. I mean, we've had other offerings. I mean, Zethius is magnificent just in every way. My figure doesn't stand. He's a little wobbly. I had another one, and it didn't suffer from the same thing. So I know that it wasn't, specific just to the line. This one's a little more wobbly when you move him. But I mean, it could even be more. I mean, just take a look at this one. This particular offering, which I understand is not as well articulated as Zethius. But this thing is awesome. I got to be honest with you. I don't even remember what line it comes from. And I'm pretty sure he's meant to be more of a Minotaur bison than that of an actual bull. But his proportions are just amazing. They just make you think that he metamorphosized from a bison into this monster. I mean, he's huge. I mean, when you take a look at him compared to Zethius, I mean, you just see the size comparison. I'm not talking about necessarily producing figures in this line. I'm sorry, at this size. I'm just saying that when you take the figures and you make them look more like the actual beast they're with, it just comes off even more so than if they're just anthropomorphized and look totally human. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm nitpicking a bit too much. I'm not meaning to take anything away from the actual figures because, let's face it, they are amazing. I'm just hoping that in the future, if they do a cat warrior, it looks more like a cat in proportion, more or less like we were saying with the earlier Stan Winston Realm of the Claw cat figures. Now here's a more recent adaptation of a Kickstarter figure. Again, can't remember the line, but I'm sure a lot of you guys have this particular figure. But just with the legs, I guess, and the overall body structure, this figure really looks good. It really looks like a canine coming through. I think even his ears are articulated. But the bottom line is, I mean, look at how ferocious it looks. It really looks like it's a dog or wolf figure. You know what I mean? It doesn't look like the wolf man. It looks like an anthropomorphic figure that still retains a lot of the animal characteristics that it should. All right. So I guess in closing, I just want to say that I enjoyed all of these figures. And whatever the Four Horsemen continue to put out as far as their anthropomorphic figures, well, I'm going to continue to buy. I mean, I'm in all the way. I'm just saying that I know that the idea of maybe making some of these figures is so you get reuse of the bucks. And while I'm at it, I apologize for sliding in my custom Dino Man there. But again, I just love the anthropomorphic figure, the characteristics that he retains as the lizard. So in closing, I just wanted to appeal to, the toy makers, the toy fans out there, when it comes to these anthropomorphic figures. I just hope they body cast these things so we can get some of the dynamic limbs that go with the characters, feline, reptiles, bull, bird, whatever. I really enjoy them. All right, guys, Superdadd2 signing off.